now, assuming that I didn't do anything wrong, which is a big if I go over here, I should be able to drag something around. So now I have
Oh,
the yeah. So really, that didn't take too much code
Well,
to actually get the basic drag and drop functionality to work here.
Ooh, that's
So
fire.
yeah,
wait.
so that's all it really takes to get it done. Not as much as you might think to get it
And
going.
that's the end of the
Do we have a
stream.
do we yeah, do we have a clap emote?
Yeah.
We do have a clap. Well, it's BTTV, but there is a clap.
What's up, everybody? My name is Derek.
And my name is Casey, and we're here to bring you a new perspective.
This is episode 5 of the show where we talk about the next gen features in Ignition.
Yeah, and this week we are welcoming Eric. Eric, why don't you tell us about yourself? What are you going to be working on today?
Hey everybody, my name's Eric. I've been here at Flexware now for 3.5 years. I'm a solutions architect here on the Ignition team. And today
Nice.
I'm going to be working on some drag and drop stuff. So yeah.
Very cool.
Very cool. Very cool.
Drag and drop. So I don't think I've seen drag and drop anywhere in perspective. What
No.
and how and why? Where did this come about? This sounds awesome.
Yeah, so I know one thing, and maybe some of you other guys have realized this too, but one thing about since we've started using perspective over vision, I feel like back in vision, it was just kind of cool to just do whatever you had. Like you kind of did some older UI layouts and all that stuff, and that was just kind of accepted. But since we've come to perspective, I've noticed a lot more demand for like now that we're in the web, we need like this new like flashy components and all this cool web dev stuff. And
Yeah.
one of the things I get a lot for that is the ability to drag. Like I put a table on the screen, they're like, "Oh, can I drag and drop stuff around that table?" Well,
Yeah.
no, you can't because it's perspective. So yeah, this is an idea. This is an idea. I had this for a while, but this is an idea I probably started working on, probably 2 or 3 months ago now, just casually. Yeah, and then finally got it done for today. So looking forward to showing it to y'all.
Awesome. Well, we are pumped.
I'm very
We've been
excited.
teasing some stuff, and yeah, good responses for sure. All right,
Yeah.
well, if we're ready to get into it, if you're ready to develop, and everybody, if you
Yeah.
guys got questions along the way, just go ahead and throw them out. We'll ask them as we go.
Definitely.
I guess we'll start out with just kind of a review of what we've done.
Yeah.
Let me show my screen here. I'll just do a quick overview. So this is what we've been building in every episode. Reese came on here at Flexware. He developed episodes 1 and 2. The first episode was this kind of just general GUI, Windows 11 themed and inspired. And then he came on the second episode, and he made this Bitcoin tracker. So kind of funny. We've been watching the price over time. Pretty cool. And then we had Mia, who came on with the Tinder inspired swipe widget. So
Oh, yeah.
you guys can submit your ideas. I had a couple ideas that got rejected,
Mia's in
unfortunately.
chat. Oh, no.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, I'm pretty sure I swiped.
Heyo.
Wait, is it right or left? Are we supposed to swipe right?
I think you
You're supposed to swipe
swipe
both ways,
right
right?
to accept. I'm not an expert, though.
All right, let's test it. Scripting 101.
He says you should be
Reese
nice,
Tyson.
also.
All right, I'm gonna go right. Oh. Oh,
Nice.
Oh,
we got it.
yeah.
It's accepted. So there's that. If you guys have ideas, you can still send those in.
I did
we're
put
still
the link
monitoring
in chat as well.
those. Okay, cool.
Rip.
And then our last episode with Nick, he came on and developed our first widget in this left-hand dock, this weather widget. Gets your locality, gives the more detailed weather, expandable, very cool. So yeah, this thing's really coming together, and I think this drag and drop's really just going to add to what we got going. So that's what we got.
Definitely.
So if you're ready, Eric, show your screen.
Ready?
We'll dive
Let's
right
do
in.
it.
All
Let's
right.
do it.
Cool.
Let me... Oh, is it
Excited.
sharing?
So
Oh,
excited.
it's already sharing. Cool.
Yep.
All right. So yeah, before we get into this, I do want to say a couple things about what we're going to be doing here. So, drag and drop, is a common thing in web dev a lot. So there's a couple ways we could go about doing drag and drop in perspective. You could probably go about doing some sort of module to use like some JS or something like that to actually do the drag and drop. However, for this approach, what we're going to be doing is actually doing it all natively in Ignition. So there's 3 reasons why I'm going that approach. One, I'm not a web dev person. I actively try to avoid it usually, so I don't really want to write that module. Not gonna lie.
Right.
The second reason is I thought it'd be an interesting challenge to do, to try to figure out, dive into perspective, see how we can push perspective in this video here. So gonna be doing that. And then the third one is that everybody who uses Ignition may not be a web dev person, but everybody who uses Ignition hopefully knows Ignition. So this
Don't
should
give
be
away the
something that
secret,
everybody
Eric.
can understand. So hopefully that this can like let everybody kind of see how we do something like this in perspective, and then once this gets posted on Exchange eventually, it'll let everybody have the most flexibility to kind of build off what's made here and kind of build their own cool stuff. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what people can come up with this sort of component after we have this baseline.
Absolutely.
So
Me too.
yeah. So with that intro to this, we're going to go ahead and start going. So there's a lot to go through here. So I'm going to kind of just be copying and pasting code in, cover the high level points as we're going. So to start out with, I'm going to go ahead and just drop, I got my base view here. I'm going to go ahead and drop on a component container, a coordinate container, sorry. And we're going to go ahead and name that our drag container. So this is going to be kind of the main container we're going to use for this view that's kind of going to store most of the stuff. So we want it to be %, so it can scale some, and we're going to go and set that grow to 1, so it takes up the whole view. So now we're going to go ahead and put on the main part of this entire thing, the thing that makes this all possible, and that is the view canvas. So I don't know how many of you have used the view canvas before.
Never.
I don't
think I have.
I don't use it a lot for actual projects, but it's one of the cooler components that I've seen in perspective. So the cool part about it is, think of it kind of like a Flex repeater, and such that it'll let you drag on like lots of different views and templates and stuff. But the nice thing about this is that it'll actually let you, drag on multiple different types of views. So Flex repeater, you always have to use the same view every time, which is kind of annoying. But this one will let you just do all sorts of and you can also control their position independently and completely on the screen, which is really neat. So it gives you a lot of power, a lot of flexibility to do what you want. So there's a couple things on here too that are kind of nice. So enable transitions lets things smoothly transfer between positions. If I change the position of a component, you think we might want to use that here, but honestly, we're going to be updating it so often that the transitions isn't really that noticeable. So I'm just going to go and turn it off. And then I'm also going to turn off these two, use default view width and height.
And what is that? For those that don't know. The default
view width and height.
Yeah.
So once you put a view inside of here, so if you notice, when we put a component in this, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later.
Sure.
We can specify a height and width here. If you have these checked, it'll ignore that and just use whatever the view that I put in its default height and width was when the view was created.
Okay.
So we don't want to use that, obviously, because we want to be able to control stuff. And eventually we want to be able to resize stuff. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler.
So now that we have that, we're going to go ahead and hop into making our base component. So I'm going to hop into this components folder here, and I'm going to make a new view. And we're going to call this the drag container. And we're going to make that we're going to leave that coordinate container actually, and we're going to go ahead and hit that. And then in here, I'm going to go ahead and size this down just a little bit because it's not going to be that big in real life. And now what I'm going to do on here is I'm going to add a couple of parameters. So this view, the idea of this view is to be our base view that we're going to have, and this is going to store all the dragging logic. So this is going to have all the messages. They're going to let you click on it to let you move it around. And we're going to actually put an embedded view in this that's going to be able to store whatever view it is you're wanting to actually drag and drop. So it's like a wrapper for whatever you're using. So first off, I'm going to add a couple of parameters. We're going to do ID, because we'll need a unique way to identify this one. I'm going to go ahead and make an object called params. So these will be the params that go into the view that we're embedding here. And then, of course, the view path, which is the path to the view that you actually want to show in here. Next, I'm going to make a couple utility custom properties. The first one is going to be hovering. This will just be a Boolean saying, yes, you're hovering this, or no, we're not. That's just going to be for some aesthetic stuff later. And then we're also going to do a selected and set them both to false by default. Okay, and then now inside of this, we're going to go and put an embedded view. So the embedded view here is going to, if I can find embedded view, there we go. The embedded view is going to be, like I said, is going to be what shows us what actually you're wanting to see in this component, since we're using kind of a wrapper. So what I'm going to do in here, I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit smaller because we don't want it to take up the whole thing. And cool. So now that we have that done there, we're going to go ahead and bind our view path. So the path of this embedded view, we want to be, go ahead and bind to our param that we added for view path. And then we're going to go ahead and bind params to our params property. And then on this one, we're going to go and add a script transform here. So the idea is eventually, we'll get into our params a little bit more later, but the idea is we want to transform these params, so the params aren't going to come in the same way that we want them to pass to the view. This will be for some stuff we're going to do later, so I'll just talk about it then. But this script is going to transform what we want. So I'm going to hit OK. And now we're going to go ahead and take our view. So the problem with having the view right now in here is that if we had, if you embedded a view in this and had like click events and stuff on it, it would override any click events we want to do, and it would start like interacting with the background when you wanted to drag and drop. So the reason we use the coordinate container here is so that I can take a flex container and actually overlay it over the entire thing. So I'm going to go ahead and set 0, 0, and make it take up the whole screen here. So now it's sitting over top of it so no click events can get through. So now that we've done that, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of styling here to it. And then on the border width, you see I have a border width here that's going to change if it should have a nice border around it. We want that to show up if it's being hovered or if it's been clicked.
Mm.
So I'm going to do an expression binding, and I'm going to go ahead and OR those two values and do a little transform here. And then I'm basically going to say if this transform is true, then instead of being true, obviously we want it to be a number. So if it's true, I want the width to be 2 pixels, otherwise I want it to be 0 pixels. So there we go with that. All right, so now that we have this all done, we can actually go into actually doing the drag and drop part of this. So I'm going to go back to the drag and drop view here. And on the view canvas, just to kind of give you an idea of how the view canvas works, I'm going to go ahead and put on an example of our drag and drop container that we have. So if I paste this on here, you'll see that I have now a component inside my view that you can actually see. So a couple things in here, I have absolute positioning because that lets us do like an X and Y coordinate container would be when you're not using the, you're using the absolute positioning in the coordinate container. Inside of this, we have the top and left. So you can think of top as being our Y coordinate from the top of the screen, and the left as being our X coordinate from the right of the screen. The width and height, of course, are the width and height of the component, and the Z index is going to be how it's layered top to bottom, so we'll utilize that a lot as well. We have our view path is always going to be set to that drag container we just made, and then inside of the view params, you're going to see the different params we just made, and with the params and the ID and the view path and all that stuff. So now that we have this here, and also forgot to mention the view path we passed in here. I went ahead and prepped before this a couple of views in here, so we have image 1 and image 2. They're just two different very simple views with icons in them, just to give you an idea, because image 1 is going to be the one we use more here. Just a simple icon, nothing fancy. And then there's one param on it for color, and that color param is binded to the color of the icon. So we'll be utilizing that here a little bit later too.
Oh.
So now we have all this stuff here on our view canvas. So I'm going to go ahead and add a couple custom properties to this view canvas that's going to let us do all the stuff we want to do. First, I'm going to make a object here called movement data, and inside of this, I'm going to make a variable called lastx and lastY, and set those empty strings. So these lastx and last y's are going to be very important for when we're doing the dragging. So there's two ways you can do drag and drop. One is that you can do drag and drop by saying put the object wherever my mouse is.
Mm-hmm.
And the other way you can do it is by moving the object the same amount that your mouse has moved in the last frame. So usually what you prefer to do is you prefer to set the object to be the same place as your mouse. However, with perspective, due to the way perspective, we can't tell how big an object is on the screen. You can't tell where your mouse is over a specific component. We can't really use that approach, so instead we have to use the delta approach. So what these variables are going to be doing is essentially storing what the X and Y coordinate was the last frame, so we can calculate that delta. Next, I'm going to have a comp index here. This comp index is going to be the actual index of the currently selected object or the currently being dragged object in the instances. And then I'm also going to add a selected component ID. So the selected component ID is going to be the actual identifier of the component that we're currently dragging. So the idea is we click on a draggable component, it's going to send a message saying, hey, my ID is being dragged. And then this will get populated with that ID. Now, the ID, we have the ID here, but that's really not very efficient to be moving on all the time. So what we want to be able to do is actually use the index so we can have an O of 1 reference to the element. So instead of searching the whole list every frame, we can just do direct access to it. So
Okay.
to do this, I'm going to go ahead and make a expression binding here. So let's go ahead and do a data property. And we're going to bind that to the data of the view canvas. And then we're going to do an ID, and we're going to bind that to the ID that was sent back from that message. So the ID of what we're actually dragging. So we're going to go and do that, and then I'm going to add a script transform here. So what this script transform is going to do is it's going to search through the entire list and find the index that has the component, the index of the component that has the identifier that we were passed back. And then we can go ahead and store that. Okay, so now that we have that ID, we can actually start creating some of the events that'll let us actually drag stuff. So I'm going to go into the view canvas here, and I'm going to add a couple events. So if I do this, first I'm going to have to do an on mouse move, because obviously we're going to have to detect when the mouse is moving so that we know how to move the component and we can update everything. So I'm just going to drag this script in here. We'll walk through it real quick. So basically what this is saying is if I'm moving my mouse, I'm going to pull out the comp index. So that comp index remembers the element that's currently selected. So if that element's greater than -1, which means we've selected something, then I want to get the current X and Y of my mouse, and I want to get the last X and Y of my mouse. And if the last X and Y are blank, then obviously I want to set the last X and Y to my current XY. That's how we get our baseline.
Okay.
And then I'm going to use that last X and Y, take the delta, and update the index, update the left and top properties of the data of the component that I'm currently moving. And then I'm going to set the last X and Y to be the current XY, so it's ready for the next frame. Next is I'm going to do on mouse up here. So on on mouse up. Sorry,
Jeez.
I can see stream chat over here.
Jeez.
So
Just
if I
ignore
laugh,
him.
I'm definitely not laughing at nothing. So in this on mouse up, I want to be able to detect when somebody actually picks up the mouse. That means they're going to stop dragging. So to do that, I'm going to see when they lift their mouse, I'm going to see if the current ID is not equal to empty string, which means that something is selected. I am going to go ahead and call this component release message, which we'll write in a little bit. And then the last part here is on mouse leave. So the other component of this is what happens if somebody's dragging and then their mouse leaves the bounds of the drag and drop interface. Then we obviously want to treat it as if they picked up their mouse. So I'm just going to do something similar there. And we're going to hit OK. And now I'm going to go in and create the messages. So the first message is going to be the one we just referenced here, which is the component released. So let's do this. And then I'm going to do a couple things here. So I'm going to, reset all the indexes, reset the last Y, last X, all that fun stuff. So we got that one, and then I'm going to add another one that is called component clicked. And on that, I'm going to just set the identifier. So this is going to be the message that our subview, that view we just made, is going to call when it's clicked, and it's going to just pass us the ID, and we want to set the selected component ID. So now we've done that, we're going to go back to our drag container, and now we need to make our drag container actually call that message. So I'm going to go to our click view here, and I am going to configure a couple events on this. I'm going to do on mouse down. So when they actually press down on the mouse, I want to start dragging. So to do that, I am going to do this.
So down is when you're actually like down and holding, down dragging. Click is just single click.
No, so down. So on mouse down is going to fire the frame they actually press down.
Okay.
So and on mouse up will fire the frame that they pick the mouse back up. So it's not going to be something that's running every frame. That would be pretty inefficient. So instead, it's just going to do the frame they start clicking.
Just when you right. Okay.
Yeah. So And on here, I can use this event off button to tell that it was specifically a left mouse press. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to check to see if it's not currently selected, which means they're just now starting to drag it. I'm going to set it to be selected, and then I'm going to send the message component click that we just did with the ID of this component. So there's that. And then I'm going to go to the on mouse up, and now we need to do the same. So we have to have an on mouse up script both on the background view and on the foreground view. The main reasons for that is because you don't know when you're dragging it, the component could be lagging slightly behind your mouse since we're doing the deltas. And if that's the case, your on mouse up script could be caught by the background or the foreground. So we have to do it on both places. One place I actually did forget here, and this is important, is that we do the stop propagation. We check this on all of them because we don't want, if we don't click that, then the on mouse down, if I click on a component, it would also fire the on mouse down in the background. Right now, not a big deal, but eventually as we add more functionality, that's going to be a big deal. So we need to go ahead and check that and check that. And we're going to go ahead and save this project. And now, assuming that I didn't do anything wrong, which is a big if I go over here, I should be able to drag something around. So now I have the, yeah. So really, that didn't take too much code to actually get the basic drag and drop functionality to work here.
Ooh, that's fire.
Yeah. So that's all it really takes to get it done. Not as much as you might think to get it going.
And that's the end of the stream.
Do we have a clap emote?
Yeah.
We do have a clap. Well, it's BTTV, but there is a clap.
Cool. Yeah. So now we have basic drag and drop, so that's pretty cool. That's a nice base for us to keep working off of. But I'm gonna be honest, if you showed some of this to somebody, they'd be like, "Yeah, that's pretty cool, but it doesn't really do anything for me." Right?
What?
Usually when we think about a drag and drop interface, right, you're gonna be usually pulling components onto the screen, and you might be deleting them, that sort of stuff. So next, I want to start diving into some of that.
Nice.
And I know, by the way, I've been kind of going through this kind of fast. That's because we have a lot of stuff to go through. If anybody has any questions, feel free to just interject and we can answer them on the spot here. So
yeah, for sure, because you're very thorough and it's very hard to come up with questions.
Well, I appreciate it.
I know,
and
I'm
I'll
like,
try to keep doing that as we're going.
He's too good at it.
Okay, so next we're going to go and get into trying to make that little sidebar where we can drag components onto the screen. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and go back to our main drag drop screen. So the idea is that this will eventually be a component. And since it's going to be a component, we need to make sure everything is pretty editable from the outside of the component, which means we need to use parameters. So I'm going to go ahead and make a parameter on this, and I'm going to make it an object, and I'm going to go ahead and call it options. This is going to be the dictionary that people are going to use to actually set the options and the things they want to appear on the left of the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and paste this. I have a couple options that I've just canned in here, and let's look at one of these real quick. So the idea in this option is they'll give us the view that they want to have as the option. They'll give us the name of that component. And then in here, they're going to have params. And the params need to have a special format. So in the params, you're going to have these objects. The name of the dictionary here is going to be the name of the param. And if you remember right, for this view, this image one view, when we looked at it, it had a color param. Right, so it needs to correspond to that name. So this is, so that's why I'm doing it here. I also have a type param. It's not actually going to go anywhere, but that's fine. So in here, I also have the value. So this is the default value. And you notice before when I did that change script for the params, you'll notice that right now this is green. I'm pretty sure right now if I did this, nope, okay, it doesn't work, never mind. All right, we're not at that point yet. So that's going to be the default value eventually once we get there. And then inside of this, you also have a config here. And this config has the type of config that you want to do. So there's a couple different types. We'll talk about this later as well. This one's text. If I go to type down here, for example, you can also do things like drop down with options, right? Drop down's the type, and then there's options with what you want to select from it. So that'll all be more relevant later, but just to give you a basic overview of what the structure of the options is. So now that we have that, I'm going to go ahead and add some custom properties here. This is kind of a weird way of doing this. And it's not my favorite way, but once we get to actually componentizing this, which we will, is that a word, componentizing?
It is now.
It is now. Write that down.
Once we do that next week, once we get to that actually next month, this will be relevant why we're actually doing this.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and add these two parameters. Maybe if I can type. And then on this change script, I'm going to go ahead and just put a change script on this parameter that toggles that refresh property. So what this is going to do is it's going to say, instead of binding directly, binding any of our updates to our views directly to these parameters, we're going to bind it to this refresh so that it only updates whenever we want it to, whenever we want that refresh flag to go. So next, I'm going to go ahead and make a new view in components here, and we're going to call it component selector background. So just like the name suggests, this is just going to be a simple background that we can have for our where all the components are going to overlay. You don't want it to just like blend into the background.
Hmm.
This is laying on the canvas.
Yeah, this will lay in the view canvas because we have to have
Okay.
everything in the view canvas that we want to be able to drag, right? And just
Gotcha.
for aesthetic purposes, it makes sense to have this in there too.
Yep.
So I'm going to do that, and all I'm going to do on this is I'm going to set the width to be 200. Not that that really matters because we'll set the width again. And I'm going to set the root style just to, some canned styles, just to give it a little bit of look and feel. Just darken it a little bit, give it a border so it sets out a little bit from the background.
Mhm.
And then I'm just going to throw a label on here so that you know what this is actually doing. We're going to say components. And we're going to go ahead and center that text. All right, that's all we're going to do for this. Pretty simple there.
Yeah.
So now that we have all of our stuff, though, we have the options, we have the background. Now we need to make that render onto the screen, onto the view canvas. So to do that, of course, we're going to do a binding. And like I said before, we're going to go ahead and bind to that refresh property instead of directly to the options. So I'm going to bind to that, and then I'm going to add this transform. And all this transform is really doing is taking what's in the options and taking that background, and it's just creating it on the and putting it in like the coordinates for the view container. So I'm gonna do this, and this is not super complicated. It's basically just like the math of translating where things should be. So I guess the only part of this that's any noteworthy is I take the current Y offset, and I'm just constantly updating the Y just to space things out on the left. Not super robust right now here, but we'll make it more robust later.
Sure.
So if I hit OK here, that's going to create all the components, and then you'll see that my background shows up over here with the options overlaid over top of it. One thing I want to note here is that you can see that I have the z-index of the background is 10, and I have the z-index of the foreground options are 20. That's why the foreground, like the draggable options, overlay over the background.
Okay.
So now we have to add some wide. Well, actually, I'm going to go ahead and save it here. Okay, so let's go to the view here, and let's see what we got. So I have these over here, and I can drag them on, right? That's pretty cool. So we can do that. It's all dynamically generating the options from what's passed in. However, this is not really the behavior you'd expect from this. Usually you'd expect I drag this over, it's going to respawn on the left so I can drag a new one onto the screen. And that's the only way this is really going to be useful. So we need to add that logic. And luckily that logic's pretty easy to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the component release message. So the idea when we have a component released, we need to then respawn the object. So to do that, I'm just going to add this little block of logic here. And what this logic does is it says, so if the z-index is, oh no. If the comp index is greater than or equal to 0, which means we've currently selected something, I'm going to pull the z-index and I'm going to see if it's 20. So what I'm doing here is I'm using the z-index as an identifier for the state of each component. So for example, 20 would be a option. Once I've placed that option onto the screen, it's going to become 2, which lets me know it's like a live component on the right of the screen. The background is 10, and eventually we'll have links. Those will be 1. So these are like unique identifiers that I can use to kind of tell what the current state of each component is.
Very cool.
So essentially what I'm going to do here when the z-index is 20, that means I'm releasing it. I'm going to transfer it to a 2, which means it's a static component. I'm going to give it a new ID, and I'm just going to make that do that by just taking its old ID and put a GUID on top of it, or on the end of it. I'm going to make it connectable, which will be relevant later. And then I'm going to go in here, I'm going to respawn the component, the option on the left, so that it shows up again, so you can drag it on. So I'm going to go and save that. And now this should look much better here. So when I drag this on, you'll see that it responds, and I can just keep dragging them. And this is a lot more what you'd expect from
Is
something
there
like
a
this.
limit? Or can I drag on a million?
I've dragged a lot of components on, and I've never reached the limit. I'm sure you can find it if you're really dedicated.
Challenge
Especially
accepted?
as these
Anyone?
components get, especially as these components get a lot more complicated. Right now, these are pretty simple.
Right.
It's just an icon, right? Not doing anything too fancy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's now this is starting to actually look like more of a
Toddler distractor.
Duck. Oh
now
no.
this is starting to look a lot more like an actual drag and drop interface. It's actually going to be useful for something. So, but we can still get a lot cooler with it, right?
Yeah.
So this would let you do basic, like, oh, I can drag stuff on it so people can look at it, right? But what would be really sweet is if we could use this for a configuration tool, right? Which means that we'd have to be able to edit the parameters of the subviews so that you can change what the views look like, right? But we want to be able to do that all from the front end, so that so that you can actually, you can have a user come in and just edit it, drag things on, edit what the parameters are of it, and then you can make your views to respond to whatever they give you. So now we're going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to hop back in here and scroll down my notes. And then on the view canvas here, I'm going to add a couple new custom properties. So if I go to the view canvas, I'm going to go ahead and make a new object parameter. And this is just for organization. No, I can't click on one of those to bring up the edit menu yet. Now, I don't think we'll get to the edit menu today, but in the final version, there is an edit menu on them. So you can like delete them, that kind of stuff.
I'm reading chat. Wow.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Taking my job away.
Taking your job, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you guys-
I'm used to it now.
Eric will be coming back next month for another
Yeah.
episode, and he'll show off an implementation of what he's developed today. So
I don't.
this is just kind of some test symbols, and
Yeah.
next month will be way cooler, I'm sure.
I don't think we
Yeah,
have the date picked yet. Do we? Or wait, what month is it? September? Oh, no, that's October.
Next month.
I thought it was October right now. No, in October will be October 27th, I think then, right?
They let the pumpkin spice out too early.
Overachiever?
We interrupted you.
Apologies.
No, you're good. So real. Oh, that's not right. Well, what I'm doing here is I'm just setting up a couple config parameters here that I can use for actually configuring a component. This is gonna be pretty similar to the movement. So you can see I have a configuring ID and a configuring index. This is gonna be the same thing as I did for movement. You have the string identifier and then the actual physical index of the item in the like the array of instances. I'm gonna have a true or false for am I currently configuring something or not. And then I'm going to also have the params of whatever I'm currently configuring. So on this configuring params, I'm just gonna go and make that a property, and I'm gonna add a script. So essentially I'm taking the index of whatever it is I'm currently editing, and I'm just gonna have a little script that's gonna iterate into the data set, and just gonna pull out the params of whatever's at that index, if the index exists. So you can see here I just have an if loop, and I'm just accessing the params.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm also going to do the same kind of thing I did on the configuring ID. So I have configure ID, the same thing I did on the movement ID, right? I'm going to go ahead and put a binding on this index and do the same kind of thing I did before. So I'm going to do a ID, and I'm going to edit this, maybe. There we go. And I'm going to bind it to the config ID. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing with the data. So this should all look pretty familiar to what I did before, unless I was talking too fast, in which case it probably didn't look too familiar.
I think you're good.
So we're going to go to instances here and do that. And then we're going to use literally the exact same script we used before to just search that list for the ID, the index that has that ID on it. So again, just a for loop looking for the ID and returning the index. So there we go. All right, so now we have to add a little extra logic to actually have it to where, so the idea is once we click on a component, we want to start editing it. Same kind of way Ignition works really, right? You click on a component, the configuration pane comes out of the left. We're going to be kind of mirroring that here. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my event handler, and this is actually a little different. On my mouse, I'm going to add on mouse down event. And this is where it was important that we did that stop propagation. So I'm going to add that script, and basically what this script's going to do is say, okay, I've clicked on a component, I'm editing it. Now when I click on the background, I want to stop editing it. So I'm going to go ahead and set the configuring ID to false and the configuring to false and the configuring ID to -1 to kind of clear out whatever I'm configuring. Again, if I didn't set that stop propagate, then every time I click something, it would stop clicking it, which would be really boring. So next, I'm going to go to the base view here, and I'm going to make a new parameter, and I'm going to call it configuration base folder. So the way the configuration is going to work is I'm going to allow you just to have a little bit more expandability. So when you're configuring, if you think in like Ignition, how you have all the params over here, we're going to do the same kind of thing. But what we're going to do for this is we're going to have the ability for you to give us views that you can use for each line. Right, so right now Ignition has a bunch hard-coded, but just to give you the maximum flexibility to do your apps, I'm going to let you make your own, right? So I have a couple that are canned, and we'll look at them here, but we're going to build those next, so you can actually make your own. Like, maybe you want to have a property that you want to have like a math component. I don't know. You can do that, right? You just make your own view, and it'll show up on the sidebar if you use the right type for editing. So let's go ahead and program the interface now. It's easier to kind of show it to you than it is to actually talk about it. So back in here, we're going to go back. So I'm skipping around a little bit, sorry. On the component clicked on the very end. Once we actually click a component, we want to start editing and configuring that component now. So you're going to see here, I'm just going to set the configuring ID to the current ID that was clicked. And we're going to go hit OK on that. And now we're going to start making that sidebar. So I'm going to make a sibling to the CRD container, and I'm going to call it make a flex container, and I'm going to name this flex. What am I supposed to call it? I lost my place. Oh no. Maybe flex config. That's it. Man, I can't read. There we go. So we're going to do it and make a flex config here, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set its basis to be 400 pixels. And I just realized too that this is not the way I want this to be oriented. So I'm going to go and switch this to a row. So now it appears as a sidebar over here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and map the display property. We only want this sidebar to display if we're currently configuring something. So I'm just going to do a property bind to that configuring property. And now you'll see it hides because we're not currently configuring anything. So now let's go ahead and make the actual line items that will appear in our when we're actually configuring a component. So I'm going to go in here in this config components, and you'll see I have a couple things already in here. We'll talk about those in a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead and make a new view called generic config component. So we're going to use a flex repeater to actually make our configuration view. So because we're doing that, we have to have one parent view that's always the same. So we're going to have this generic config component be that unique parent, or that similar parent that's going to be common in the flex repeater. So I'm going to go ahead and set a size to the dimensions that I want, and then we're going to, inside of this, we're going to have a couple of parameters. So we're going to need to add the base folder, and we're going to have the name of the component, and we're going to have the params that we want to have passed in. So these params would be the params of the component we're currently configuring.
Okay.
Oh no. No, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Okay. And then we're going to do the type. So this is the current type of component that we want to actually configure, and the value. And so we're going to make this bidirectional. Okay, so let's talk about these params a little bit here. So the base folder is going to be the folder that's going to contain all of the different configuration line items you want to be able to have. So you see mine would be set to whatever the path of this is. So if I do this, that would be because this is where all my components are. So essentially if I set this path, then the type is going to be the name of what you want to use. So if I'm doing text here, for example, that means I'm going to use this as my configuration line item. So what this lets you do is if you wanted to have, like I said, if you wanted to have a map component one, you could go in here and just create a new view called map. And the only thing you have to have is it has to have an output parameter that is called value. And that's just going to be whatever I'm going to pass back up to your view. Right? Wow. So the idea is we have a value passed down. Your component, they're going to do some configuring. You're going to give me back a value. and then our screen is going to take care, this component is going to take care of taking that value and routing it back up to the component you're configuring into the proper parameter for whatever you're configuring. So there's going to be a lot of stuff there that's passing that parameter around, but
That's
trying to
super
make it pretty
flexible.
easy when you're developing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right, we want to make sure you can build lots of different things with this. So to keep going on that now, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put an embedded view on this. So of course we need to be able to have an embedded view so we can show whatever it is that you made. So we're going to do this. And in this embedded view, we're going to go and bind the path to be whatever the base folder is plus the type. And oh, you know what? I realized that I misnamed something. No, I didn't. What did I do wrong? Oh, I did a property instead of an expression by an expression. That was stupid. There we go. All right, and now I'm going to do params. And we're going to go ahead and for the params, we're going to do a expression structure. We're going to do name. So we want to pass the name in, and into the subviews you can do whatever you want to do with the name. So if I find that's name, and then we're going to go ahead and pass in the we're going to pass in the params. So this is the configuration of whatever you're actually trying to edit here. So if you remember when we were actually configuring, when we looked in the options folder, there was the params the params inside of the actual I'm just gonna go look at it. Actually, let me finish this first. So I'm gonna do a script.
It's all
And
good.
now I'm gonna put a script here that's gonna take the name and take the data, and it's just gonna transform it all. We're gonna take the params and transform it into params. So it's basically just gonna have this name value. We're always passing in a name parameter, and we're always passing in a value parameter, which, like I said, the value is what you're gonna be returning through. And then we're just gonna take whatever other params are passed in, and we're gonna also map those in. So you'll see here now that we're done, if I look at this, so I had this text component that simply takes the name and the value, and then it shows the name here, and the value is whatever is typed in here. So if I go here and I wanted to change the name, for example, to be test, right? If I do that, it'll change here, and that's just because my sub view is handling it that way. And then if I wanted to change value, I could change it to well, apparently that's not doing anything right now. I think it does it on startup, so that would only work when that started up. So next, what I'm gonna do is I am going to, in here actually, I'm gonna have on the value of here. So once once you return a value from your sub view, right? I want to take that change script, and I'm gonna take that value and I'm gonna write it back to the output parameter. So I want to send it back out so that we can use it externally. So I'm gonna do that, and that will essentially take whatever's here and it will write it back to the param. So I have these other views here that are going to be used in here. Next, I'm going to make in here, I'm going to make the actual pane. So now we need to be able to take these, we need to be able to order them in a flex repeater. So I'm going to make a new view here, and we're going to call this the config pane. We're going to make that a flex repeater or a flex container. We're going to hit OK on that. I'm going to go ahead and set the width to be 400 actually on this, so that it matches what it was in the real world. And I'm going to set the style to just look a little bit different than the background here. That just giving it a little bit of a border. And then I'm going to add some params to it. So in the params, first we're going to take in the config of whatever the config options of whatever it is we're currently configuring. So I just copied this straight from one of the options we had. So I'm going to do that. Actually, no, I didn't. I just made this up. And then we're going to have output params as well. So the params is the config is going to be the input. The output params is going to be whatever we write back out of the view, so that we can pass that down to our drag container. So I paste that. Right now we're just going to make it look the same. Nope, I don't want that to be right or external. There we go. That's just going to go out. And then we're going to make a base folder that we can just keep passing in, because we need that base folder for what the components are going to be populated from. So, and we're just going to set that to be this for now. Oh no, I don't want that. Copied too much. There we go. All right, now we're gonna add a little label just so it has a little bit of a header. label. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and put a style on that. And, you know, we're not going for anything super pretty here, but for now. But we're just going to make it look a little bit different here. Make it look somewhat acceptable, you know?
That's next month.
Yeah.
Me.
He
we
is.
can't have that. We can't have that. You made me look at chat. I was like, oh no, I'm gonna get fired now, aren't
Oh,
I?
I lost you guys for a second there.
All right. I'm gonna throw a flex repeater onto here now, and we're gonna set the grow of this to 1. And now we're going to set the defaults to false. And we're going to set the element position basis to be 15 for now. Again, we'll fix this later. And then we're going to set the element style just to give it a little bit of separation. We're going to put this in here so it'll separate them a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and set the path to be look in that folder, the base folder that we gave, and then look for the generic config component. And then we're going to have on the instances here, we're going to have a property binding to our config. And we're going to just take this change script. And essentially, this is just formatting everything that's coming in. And it's taking all the config parameters and it's formatting in such a way that our flex repeater can use it. Oh no. And there we go. Tab this back here a little bit. All right, I'm not gonna walk through all this, but essentially it's just morphing the parameters to kind of work in all of the different instances on there. If I hit OK, then, that looks gross, doesn't it? Let's make that a column. There we go, that looks a little bit better. Still looks kind of gross though. Let's set the grow here to be 0. Oh my, that's because this is supposed to be 35 probably. There we go, that looks a little bit better. So you can see now we're taking in, based on the config here, we're taking in description, name, type, XY, right? And it's kind of making them in here. Now the cool part about this is what you didn't see here is so if you don't give me, so under some of these, I have this thing called, in config, I have this thing called section. So you can give me a section header. And some of these have a section, X and Y both have a section header. So I'm automatically generating that header. For some of these, if you don't give me a header, right? Oh, this gave me a section of general, but if you didn't give me one, I would just put it under general description. So just a little nuance of how that works.
Cool.
Okay, and now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go onto the instances. So when the instances change, we're going to want to run a change script that's just going to format the data back to what it was before when it was put in so the outside can understand it. And it's just going to write to the output parameters so we know it changed. So now we're going to go back to the main view here, and inside of our new container that we made for this, we're going to go and set the display to true, and we're going to go and double click on that guy, and we're going to throw an embedded view in this. We're going to set the grow to 1. We're going to set the path to be this. And now you'll see it appears there. We're going to set the params. There we go, to be this. So, and then we're going to go ahead and bind the config stuff. So you remember that config params that we made that would store the params of whatever we are currently clicked on. We're just going to bind directly to that. And now those will come in. And the base folder we're going to bind to that new parameter we made on the base view. That's called configuration base folder. There we go. And now we are going to just go to the output parameters. And we want the output parameters, so once the parameters come back out, again, these are the changes that have been made for this component. We're going to basically take those params, and we're just going to forward them directly. So we're going to use the config index. So what component are we currently editing? And we're just going to take those params, and we're going to write it to the params of that component. So that's how we're forwarding the params back out in real time. So once we make the edits, the params should reflect on the view real time. So that's really all it takes. That's what it takes to do that. I know there was I feel like looking through it's going to be hopefully be a little bit clearer than that. There's like a lot of parameters passing back and forth, so I'm sure it's a little bit hard to keep track of when we're going through it. But if we did it right, I can drag this onto here. And if I click this, you'll see my view shows up. And because of the options I had, if you remember, I configured it with a type and a text, the type and the color parameters, right? So you can see I have my options, which I also configured in the options array I passed in. And the cool part here is that you remember I had that param called color on the view. I also have a color field here. So what I can do is I can go here and you'll see it changes real time, changes the color of it. So that's just proving that a simple way to prove that the params are getting edited, getting real time passed in. You know, you could do stuff much more complex than just changing a color of a view. Your params of your component are just getting updated in real time with whatever they configure over here.
With all the colors in the rainbow, you pick yellow on white.
Yeah, because it was 2 Fs I could type.
Did you
I could
not read the HMI handbook?
Oh no. Oh no. All right, fine, whatever. We'll do this. There you go. Purple. Is that better?
You just have to move the Fs around.
It was, yeah.
Ask in chat.
I could, you know.
No. Hey, Reese says it's cool. I feel like he was
as long as
paid
Reese
to
is
say
happy,
that. I
I'm
don't
happy,
know.
Oh,
Who's this
cool.
Flexware Reese guy anyway?
I don't know who that is.
Oh, and you can see too if I click off of it, it does close it, which is what we had that one
nice.
for. So there
Cool.
you go. So yeah, that's the thing.
Very cool.
So, all right, we're getting a little bit short on time here, but next I'm gonna go ahead and do panning. So you know these views, as you're doing these charts and stuff, they're gonna get pretty big, right? So you're gonna want to have to be able to move around the screen a little bit to kind of keep up with what's going on and see everything.
Actually, I think
So to do that,
while you're pulling this up, I think I don't know if you answered it earlier, but like how is like the scalability of like using the view canvas? Like could you have this like huge or
So the view canvas itself, so if you look at the view canvas here, there is a option someplace on here.
there's a lot going on over here. Yeah.
Oh, here we go. If you go into each instance, you
Okay.
can give some options about the positioning of it being absolute or relative.
Sure.
So it's the same kind of thing as a component container. The nice part is with the with the view canvas, you can actually mix and match if you wanted to.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
I wouldn't recommend it. I've never come across the use case where it's good to mix and match, but you know you can, which is cool, right? So if we did absolute, I mean relative, then that would mean we're using like percentages, right, to move around. So then it scales really well, right?
Yeah.
Now the unfortunate part is for this instance, since we're doing drag and drop, we need to know definitive X and Y coordinates to be able to control definitive X and Y coordinates because we can't get a percentage of how much your mouse has moved over a component.
Okay.
So because of that, we're stuck using absolute, which is like the one big downside of how this works right now, is that if you tried to scale up or down the view, it would not scale the components inside of it, right? Which is like a big rip, right? Oh, that sucks, right?
Yeah.
Now there is a bright side to this, right? And in the final version of this, which I won't show today, we do have a scroll where you can pan, you can scroll in and out, so you can zoom and you can adjust the zoom from the outside. So you know, even though it's not a full like scalability, like oh, it still sucks that you can't do that. We do give you the ability to zoom it in case you would like say, you know, if we wanted it to look like it's scaled somehow, right?
Okay.
So it's the best we can really do by doing it in perspective, at least as far as I know. Maybe somebody else has some idea for how to get around that, but I'm not that smart. So
you don't know. I don't know if anyone's gonna know.
So cool. All right. Well, I'm gonna try to knock out panning real quick,
Yep,
and then
apologies.
we'll have to do the links part next month, I think. So
Yeah.
it's okay. So I'm gonna hop back on the view canvas here. Panning's pretty easy. So we're just gonna add a custom property now that's called mouse down. So this is gonna track, you know, just be a really simple property to say, is my mouse currently down? Just like the name implies. So I'm gonna go and set that to false, and then I'm gonna have an on mouse down event on the on mouse down event. Wait, I'm gonna go to the on mouse down event, and I'm going to set when the mouse goes down, I want to set that property to true. And then conversely, well, actually, never mind. Yeah, and then oh, I forgot. I'm gonna go back into here actually, and I'm going to go to the on mouse move, and this is where we're gonna add our little panning stuff here. So the idea here is that we want to pan if we're moving our mouse with our mouse down, but we're not currently holding anything. So we have our if here to check if we're holding anything. So we're just going to go down and make an elif, right? So elif, our mouse is down, and this is just what this is doing is this is doing the same kind of deltas. How far is our mouse moved? since the last frame, and we're iterating through everything on the screen that has a z-index of 1 or 2, which means it's either a link, which we'll talk about next month, or a component on the screen, and we're just going to update its position by the delta, well, by negative the delta, so it looks like you're panning. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK on that. And then we're going to go, never mind, I want to go back into that. I don't know why I keep leaving. So we're going to go into our on mouse up, and we're just going to go ahead and set the on mouse down to be false in these, right? So you picked up your mouse, you want it to be false now. So on mouse down, and same thing with leave. If I move my mouse off the screen, we want it to treat it as if we picked up our mouse. And we're just going to do that. Okay. And now what we should be able to do is we should be able to drag this on. We should be able to drag this on. And now you can see if I drag here in the middle and I can pan them both around.
Nice.
Oh.
So you can do like this little panning. Oh no, I did something wrong. Oh no.
Everybody close your eyes. Don't look.
Everybody close your eyes, yeah.
Wait. We have
I definitely didn't do something wrong.
Oh no, here it
It's
comes.
the stream, guys.
troubleshooting time.
I swear.
I was waiting to use this.
I
He's
know.
been
I know.
waiting.
You've
He's
been
had
waiting
that-
this whole time. Yeah.
He's had that thing wound up this entire time.
All bottled up. I don't know what I even did wrong, honestly. I'm sure I did something stupid. So that means we're probably not clearing the last X, last Y. And which means it probably wouldn't get component released.
Do I need to
You
bring
know
the
what?
banner back out?
The banner?
Just let me know.
Troubleshooting time.
We're gonna do this. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do that, and we'll see if this does
Reese
any,
has a
literally
point, you
anything.
guys. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is all on
Totally
purpose.
planned.
Totally.
He knew I had it too.
Yeah, he's just been sitting there waiting to click that button.
No, it still doesn't work. All right. Well, I'm not sure what's going on with this, but I'm pretty sure when I'm missing something in my script.
But in theory, you should be able to like pan, and they should.
Yeah, I can do this, and it shouldn't reset the
Yeah,
position.
shouldn't reset it.
But
Yeah.
you know, you'll just have to believe me when I say it works in the actual one.
Let's see. Does everyone in chat believe him? Is he lying?
Probably not.
I
wouldn't
believe you.
me.
Oh no!
No one.
Oh no!
Oh, no. Awesome. Okay. Yes. So we're at 5 now. So I think I'm probably just gonna go ahead and call it there. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. We'll just place
So-
it. We'll just do links next month.
Yeah, so that's the last piece. Links and then an actual implementation, which we can show
Yep,
off.
Yep.
Cool.
I'm
We just need to do
excited.
links and then implement it. Yeah. So that's what we have to look forward to next month.
All right, we do have that teaser out there on my LinkedIn. Check it out. Flexware shared it. So if you want to see what it looks like kind of in state, you can see it there. And I think that's it. Anybody have any last minute questions before
Yeah.
we
That's-
before we wrap this up?
Got some hearts from Duck. Thank
Got
you,
some
Duck.
hearts.
Everyone that hung out with us.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
And
This
this
is
buff, whoever
crazy.
that is.
Yeah, this buff guy.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for, hey, thanks for having me on, guys.
Absolutely.
It was a good time.
And
Thank
I
you.
think too, Derek, Casey, when do you want to talk about what's going on next week over here at Flexware? Cool stuff we got going on.
Next week is Ignition Days here at
Yeah.
Flexware Innovation. So every year we do Flextoberfest,
Yeah.
and the whole next week, almost the whole Ignition team, which there's what, 20 of us ish,
Yeah.
20ish.
Probably 21 now, right?
Yeah, 20,
I don't know.
21.
There's
We'll
a
be in the
lot.
office, and we're gonna do some codathons. We're gonna hang out, and we're gonna record it all, and you will see.
Oh, are we?
Ignition Days.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't remember signing off on this.
We're gonna record it, and you'll get to see Ignition Days.
Oh, no.
3 people.
And you'll get to see which team gets to be the true team A++.
Oh yeah, we are battling.
Brain.
Yes, battling.
I guess technically
Oh,
I'm against these guys here, so you know.
Yeah.
whatever.
It's
Yep.
alright, Casey. It's okay to be second, Casey. You know, it'll be
True.
fine.
Oh yeah, you are on the other team. Amen.
Yeah.
Hey, as long as I have a job, I'm okay. All right, so Derek,
Oh,
you posted
no.
our upcoming events. You can check
Yep.
those out there. All of our socials, if you're not following us, definitely do. No pressure,
Follow us
but
on
do it.
LinkedIn. You'll see all the posts about the show. And
Yep.
we'll see you next month. Eric, we'll see you next month. Thank you again.
Awesome. Look forward to it.
And
Bye.
we're out.
All right, bye, you guys.